This episode is brought to you by Honda. When you test drive the all-new Prologue EV, there's a lot that can impress you about it. There's the class-leading passenger space, the clean, thoughtful design, and the intuitive technology. But out of everything, what you'll really love most is that it's a Honda. Visit honda.com/EV to see offers.
Hello and welcome to Audiobook Connection, behind the scenes with the creative teams. I'm Becky Parker Geist, and I'm your host. Audiobook Connection is your place to learn about the audiobook creative process in discussions between the authors, narrators, producers, and post-production teams that bring them all together, as well as guests who have listened to the audiobooks and have questions for the creative teams. This podcast is sponsored by Pro Audio Voices, helping great stories come alive through audiobook production and marketing. Today, I'm with Joe Belcastro, author of Dominature, What If the Devil Banished God from Heaven? Joe is a prolific writer. He lives in Tampa, Florida. His career escapades include journalism, covering the film industry and local nightlife scene, to becoming a syndicated film critic, to head writer and producer for WWE television programming, hunkering down in writers' rooms and traveling all over the world, executing storylines in major arenas. The dream job had arrived until something else was then awakening inside of him. And that's what we're going to hear about today. Joe, welcome.
Hi there. Thank you for having me.
So let's hear a little bit about where and when your passion for writing began. Do you remember?
It probably was writing songs back in college. And I'll date myself. This is 20 years ago. And yeah, my friend, a very good friend of mine, still to this day, he asked me, "Hey, you want to play in my band?" I go, "Who else is in it?" He's like, "Just me." I'm like, "Okay, let's do it." And so
Cool.
He kind of taught me the bass guitar, and it wasn't anything complex. We were in a hard rock metal band. You only really needed 2 strings to play a bass guitar. You don't need all 4 of them.
Uh-huh.
But that's when I started kind of writing song lyrics and doing that. And I loved that. I absolutely love doing that. I still doodle that on plane rides and stuff like that.
Nice.
But I think that's where it started. And then shortly thereafter, I got a journalism gig. And it wasn't a full-time thing by any means. It's just some site, when the .com sites were rising and citizen journalism was kind of becoming a thing. Mm-hmm. And I took this chance just to write about movies, kind of like an op-ed, just my thoughts on things. And it was very entertaining and colorful, but also very immature when I look back on any of them. I was just like, somebody in my 20s shouting my mouth off like people do today all over, social media.
Yeah.
So that's where it's kind of all started.
Cool. And so as you had risen through the ranks in a way, risen, maybe it would be a better way to say would be as you journeyed through this career shifts, then we get to this point where you've got your dream job. And tell us a little bit about what that was like as you started to experience this other thing, Dominature, awakening inside of you. Yeah, what was the experience like?
Well, with WWE, that's the dream job you're alluding to. That was always it. And in college, I was obsessed with how the programming changed, where it became more storyline driven, not just about the fights in the ring, the matches in the ring. Mm-hmm. And so that was always priority number one. And I knocked on the door for years and couldn't get anywhere. And then eventually, things happen to you when you're ready, I feel, in life. Right. And they came after me. And I was not as into it as I was probably back when it happened. So this happened, now 9-10 years ago. And I jumped right on it and I couldn't have been happier. It gave me the best time of my life thus far. Yeah. And, I remember everybody, my family, my friends, like, they're like, "You're set. You're there." And I go, "Yeah, I am." And I was. And there was nothing negative about the experience. It's just something when that idea, I just was creatively thinking about it a lot about, I always wanted this epic God versus the devil battle. Mm-hmm. I love those movies that tackle that mythology. I love those stories, but I never felt like anybody did let's bring God and the devil in like this epic fantasy type style. And so I created my own version of a god character, my own version of a devil, although they are kind of familiar as you get into the book.
All right.
But once I switched the dynamic, that's when it all just came flowing to me. And within, pretty sure it was a weekend, I had the whole story outlined, and then I, walked away from it for a little bit, came back to it. And then I still surprised myself and put in my notice that I was leaving WWE. And yeah, I'm over 2 years removed from that, and people are still can't believe I did it. And sometimes I can't believe I did it, but I have no regrets. And I'm so glad I'm doing what I'm doing now with Dominature.
Yeah. It really gave you the time that you needed. Sounds like.
Yeah.
Pursue it in full. Yeah.
You do need that time. You can't, I feel for all these people that tackle so many shows, and, I have people in the television industry that I know and film industry, and it's just, man, you get stretched and you can't focus. And I'm like, if I'm going to do this, if I'm giving up a dream career that gave me my dream lifestyle, I got to make sure I go all in, and I got to kind of rekindle that hustle that I had when I was doing before WWE, the journalism stuff and all that. And scraping by. So I tried to recreate that, believe it or not. And some people say I'm a masochist, but I think it helps. I mean, long way to go still, even though I got somewhere with it, and I still have some ways to go to make sure I can keep doing this.
Yeah. And so what's the aspiration in terms of moving forward? I know that you write prolifically, so I'm going to ask you a little bit more about your process and stuff, but what are you thinking about in terms of, or what do you see going forward for yourself?
I would love to. Dominature, what the Devil Banished God from Heaven was going to be just one story, one book. Mm-hmm. And I briefly toyed with maybe just writing a television series and using those connections that I have. It would have been a lot faster, right? To get it adapted. Because my ultimate goal, and I'm a fan of this, I just want to see this story come to life, because I've never seen anything like it on TV or movies or anything like that.
Yeah.
But now, the second book, I was like, okay, I know what I want to do with the second book. And I actually completed the second book. I'm just kind of sitting on that for the moment. Mm-hmm. And then there's a third, and I know how it ends. And that's something everybody who writes in professional manner, you have to know where you're going with the story. And I always had the ending, the grand ending, if you will. And so I don't feel I'm forcing it, because I'm not a big fan of, when I watch television shows that overstay their welcome for a few more seasons than they should have. And I was like that with WWE in my storytelling with our respective shows. We always knew when to get out, as we used to say. And that's something I still am able to apply, I think. So basically, it's a long way to answer your question. 3 books. And then I want to just be able to hang my hat on that and, basically make the living off the books. I know it's going to take some time, but yes, the dream, the pie in the sky is see this brought to life by somebody. And obviously I would like to be involved in it, but I also would love to see somebody just give their vision. I'm not a control freak about anything. I'm very into the collaborative thing, because I've been in writers' rooms.
Right.
So that's the ultimate goal. I want to see that happen.
Yeah, this you bringing that up reminds me of a podcast episode we did recently, where we were talking about the additional palettes that are brought into the collaborative process and the great benefits of that. Yeah. What's your writing process like? I mean, do you have a dedicated writing time and you sit down and write no matter what during that time frame, or how does it work for you?
I have a discipline, and I think I carried that over from WWE, because WWE, just for those that don't know, it's live every week. We're going on the air live 52 weeks a year. There's no off season. There's no time to recalibrate. So you learn to kind of process a story, get it down from, blank page to the final script before you go on the air. Sometimes that happens a couple days before and you're set and you're just kind of rehearsing. Other days you're right up to the minute where the show goes live. But I didn't take a lot of time, and I've said this kind of in other interviews, but I think it's really important that when I stopped WWE, I only took like 7 or 8 days. And then I just kept writing again. I started chapter 1 because I knew the story. I just had to start putting the chapters together.
Right.
And so I got in this rhythm, like, let's just get 1,000 words a day minimum for the most part. Some days, there's a day where you don't do anything. Those happen. But usually 1,000 words a day. Sometimes it's great. Sometimes it's awful, but you can always fix that. Right. But that was a goal, minimum 1,000 words. And I never really had to force that. It kind of just came naturally. And sometimes, there's days where you hit 3,000 and you're like, whoa, you don't even know you do it. But then there's other days where maybe you only got to 700 or 800. And since I didn't have a deadline, I didn't have agents breathing down my neck or anything like that saying, get this done.
Yeah.
So, but I did want to keep kind of that work ethic that was instilled in me at WWE and just bring that to my writing process for Dominature. And that's how I was able to finish the second book already. Yeah. And I don't feel I'm rushing. I'm very harsh on myself. I don't believe it. Once you have something, you can play with it for 10 to 12 years. I know some great authors have done that to their success.
Yeah.
It's just not me, because I think you can do that with a song. You can mess with a song forever, but only you know what you want. There's probably 10 ways to do something and 9 of them are fine. 8 or 9 of them.
Yeah. When you head into your writing process, you have already mapped out what each chapter is essentially, like, you've got it outlined.
Yes, there's very little. One of my favorite characters, I will admit this, the favorite characters in Dominature, the first book, one we're talking about.
Yeah.
That came during the writing process. I did not have this particular character in mind when I was going through, but I got to this chapter before, and then they I need somebody else here to help tell some other stories or side stories and stuff like that. And that person became my favorite character in the book. So that cool. Surprised me a little bit. But for the most part, I didn't tweak much. There's always some things you pull away or something that, the character thing, but I pretty much go with what I have. And maybe at the editing process is where I would pull something away or say, all right, I don't need this. It's just filler, something like that.
Yeah. Do you feel like your characters speak to you? Do you have that experience of they're telling you what you need to write, or that they're speaking through you or anything?
I don't. So my cousin asked me a question. She started reading it. She got about maybe halfway through so far. And she goes, I think this person's you. And my response was I think every character is some of me, and then every character is absolutely none of me.
Yeah.
So that's kind of how I framed it, and probably just also protecting myself, because I do take some shots at people or groups. I do have some strong opinions, but sometimes that is really just, sometimes that's what you have the character to be. I had to study about one character that I didn't really fully understand. I knew what they were, but I didn't know how would this person react to something like this, and how far would they take it? And so I had to watch somebody in real life through news stations and stuff like that, and kind of get a sense of how this person would react to something that's going on.
Interesting. Is there a message, an overall message that you would like, that you're hoping that your readers pick up and take away from this story, from this book, this first one?
I wrote it basically just to have a cool story with a different dynamic that I don't think is out there. I'm not saying people did not write about God versus the devil in some form or fashion. Yeah. Because trust me, I did a ton of searching to see, did anybody do Devil Banishing God from heaven? Any type of concept or that premise or gimmick, if you will, whatever you want to call it. And I didn't find it. So it was just mainly how do I tell a cool story? Yes, I get deep at certain points. There is some biblical content to it and messaging here and there. But in one word, balance. I want people to examine balance. And that gives you some perspective on just about anything. Not so much what's going on in the story, but overall, if we just take the time and realize this whole world, at least in my experience, and I've only been here, I haven't been here my whole life yet, so I don't know, but I feel like balance and perspective are key themes woven in, but it's also just me trying to have fun and tell an epic story. I say Lord of the Rings just because I think that's the greatest trilogy I ever watched. And I love the story that Tolkien created in the world. And, I see the themes in it, but overall it's just fun to be around and explore.
Right.
And so that's kind of what I hope people get that out of this. But obviously I'm doing a little bit of a social commentary about the states of the world. And the only thing I'll say is my research, because I traveled through a couple time periods, we haven't really evolved that much. We are about, we're not making leaps and bounds like everyone thinks we are. Maybe in technology, yes, but overall is how we think and how we use this stuff. Oh, no. Yeah. We are just the same people.
Yeah. Let's take a short pause and we'll be right back.
Frustrated by the royalty rates for your audiobook? Annoyed that when the digital distributors say 70%, they actually mean 70% of 50% or 80% of 70%, neither of which is an actual 70%. Wishing there was a way to cut out or at least shrink the middleman. Yet, you want your audiobook listeners to have a smooth and positive experience, and a direct download sale from your website won't deliver that. Pro Audio Voices hears you. Out of our commitment to our author clients, we've created Amplify, a program that provides an actual 65% royalties of the price you set, that gives you access to your customers' names and emails so you can reconnect with them, and keeps you in the driver's seat. Check it out at proaudiovoices.com in the marketing menu.
And we're back. Let's sort of jump into another area, and that is the audiobook production side of things. So first of all, you were able to listen to several auditions. What were the qualities of the audition that led you to choose John Waters to narrate?
Yeah, everybody was solid. And I was very impressed because I didn't know how, look, if I'm doing this, I put on my showrunner hat. And I said, here's what I want. And I was very specific. I'm like, am I getting too specific when I'm, passing along the notes to the audition and the casting and all that? And so there's a variety of characters, right? And I know some of my divine characters, they speak in a different syntax than what we're used to. So I didn't know what I was expecting. But then when I got all these back and everyone had a different style, I was like, okay, this voice acting is amazing. Yeah. And so it was tough, but John just was it felt like he was actually into the story when he was reading his stuff. He was instantly into the characters without knowing much. And that was even before he and I spoke. Yeah. And so then when we did speak, I knew I was pretty confident that he was going to nail this. And his narration, that stands out to me now that I've listened to it all the way through and given notes and stuff like that. His narration was so good. Yeah. I mean, very, very good. And the fact that I told him to do it in a different accent than what he normally is, and he did it. Yeah. And he was able to switch out so much because I do have a lot of dialogue in my book. Right. I was impressed. And that's also, my first audiobook I've ever listened to.
We need to hear more about that. Yeah.
But John, I can't thank him enough. I mean, sometimes you have a voice in your head. Yeah. And then I told John, hey, look, I know I have a ton of characters. These are the ones I'm maybe a little particular about, but I also said, go with what you feel. And you also have to be aware, he's trying to do a different voice for everybody. Right. And, but the point is, the point is you want an audiobook because the reason I got the idea of the audiobook is because I've been on this book tour. And when I'm at these book festivals or Comic-Cons, people have asked, is there an audiobook? And enough people have asked. Or I was like, you know what? I should probably have one. Yeah. Ideally, if I look back, I wish I had, a better launch plan of doing it all at once, ebook, paperback, and audio. But then I was like, maybe the audio is another jolt of life. Yeah. No one will find out. So I was like, I don't mind doing it. It'd be probably come out 9-10 months after I released the book. So I was like, maybe that's another shot in the arm, and I need it anyway. Yeah. So, I think we're going to get to it, but it was a different experience listening to your own story read back to you with voices. But John did great.
Yeah, I'd love to hear any more about that, what that first experience, because, so many the folks that I'm talking to they've been listening to audiobooks for a while, so but now you have that experience where the first audiobook you've listened to was your own. So that's kind of special.
And scary. It was, and not because not that I thought John was going to do a bad job or anything like that. Yeah. It's just, I was like, oh my gosh, you read your story a bunch of times and you're too close to it and then you can step away from it. But when you hear it, and it was just, oh, am I going to realize that this isn't as good as I felt it was going to be?
Mm-hmm.
And, they always say, and I'm fully fine admitting this, they always say, if you want to find all the typos in your book, publish your book. And so when John was reading a couple of words, I was like, wait a minute. And I was like, oh my God, there's that typo and he's reading it this way. I was like, thank God I caught it. Cause I'm a big believer in 143,000 words. If I only had, let's just say 10 typos in 143,000 words, I'm fine with that. Cause it's not like, everything else is okay. And, but listening to it, I think I was like, am I as funny as I think I am? That's the only thing. The parts of humor, I was like, I don't know. This doesn't. Maybe other people think it's funny. I'm like, I don't know if I think that's funny anymore. So that's the only thing that kind of rattled me. I don't know if rattled's the word, but that got me a little bit. But other than that, listening to it, I enjoyed it. Not my own story, but just enjoying the experience of the audiobook.
Mm-hmm.
I was having a blast, actually. I flew right through it. And I'm thinking to myself, why have I been doing this all along? This is lovely.
Yeah. And I will say, the thing about the typos is we almost always, when we're recording audio, we almost always find typos, regardless of whether it's been done by some, super well-known press or indie authors. We're all human. Looking for the errors and in the proofing. So they happen. Yeah. Tell me about what about the process of producing these audiobook stands out to you?
I believe his name was Carlos, who was the engineer.
Yeah.
And he was I think the program did a lot, but he was very aware of check this, check that. He was on top of it. He felt like a music producer where the band recorded their stuff.
Yep.
And he went through it and he was like, well, this is my name too. It didn't feel like it was just a process of, all right, this guy wants an audiobook. Let's just get it done and make sure it sounds clean, right?
Yeah.
No, they were making sure do you like this? Do you like that?
Yeah.
In addition to my review. And I was like, wow, I was just very pleased with that. And, this is my first experience. So I was like, it's a great experience. Now the bar is set to here.
Yeah.
With, using pro audio voices. And so I was very happy that was the case. And then my notes, because I'm going to say what I want to say, it is my name on it in the end.
Yeah.
And all were taken care of real quick. And I never had to say anything twice.
Yeah.
It was just one conversation back and forth and it was done. And so the production, all that was phenomenal, really. I have no complaints at all.
Oh, great. Yeah, actually, Carlos does have a background in music producing as well. So that's interesting. You picked that up. Yeah, that's cool. Yeah. Well, how can our listeners find out more about you and your work? What website would you send them to?
Well, I would actually send them to, I'm trying to build up my social media because I didn't have to have social media during my WWE days. I got to just sit in the background and put my work out there. Now I need social media because you have to connect with the world when you're an author. So my Instagram and Twitter is at Dominature Novel. And that will take you to a link where you can see where all the books are sold, where this audiobook will be available when we release it coming up. And anything about me is just where I'm going to be going on the rest of the book tour, stuff like that. So that's the best place, my Instagram and Twitter.
Okay.
And that can take you to anywhere else.
Okay, great. All right. Again, this is Joe Belcastro, author of Dominature, What If the Devil Banished God from Heaven? Thank you so much for being with me today.
I appreciate you. Thank you so much.
Thanks for joining us for Audiobook Connection, behind the scenes with the creative teams. Please take a moment to subscribe at audiobookconnection.com. The podcast is sponsored by Pro Audio Voices, helping great stories come alive through audiobook production and marketing. Learn more at proaudiovoices.com. Again, thanks for being with us, and please join us next week.
This podcast is a part of the C-Suite Radio Network. For more top business podcasts, visit c-suiteradio.com.